All right, I'll call the Wednesday, October 30th, 2024 Essex Junction City Council meeting to order. Are there any agenda additions or changes?
No.
No? Great. I'd like to thank Essex Police Department for hosting us this evening and for future meetings while 2 Lincoln is renovated. Move on to public to be heard. This is a portion of the meeting where members of the public can bring comments, questions, concerns to the board. I'm not seeing anyone in the room with anyone in the room who wants to speak. Is there anyone online that has anything they'd like to talk about? Please raise your hand in Zoom, and if you're having trouble doing that, just unmute and identify yourself. Not seeing or hearing from anyone, so we will move on to business item 5A, Rec Advisory Committee interviews. We do have one person with us tonight, Cora DeLucia. Come on up. There's a spot right there. It's sort of far away, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Did I say your last name okay?
DeLucia. Yeah.
DeLucia, okay. I think we've all read your application. I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that or introduce yourself during the meeting, kind of why you're interested in this.
Sure. So I'm Cora DeLucia. I'm interested in doing this because I'm kind of new to Essex. I like spending a lot of time outside, so I thought this would be a good way for me personally to be more familiar with what there is actually in Essex for me to be doing, and also kind of develop a little bit of community. Who I am, I teach high school science up in St. Albans at BFA. Born and raised in southern Vermont, and I kind of came back after traveling around, figuring out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be, and I guess this is where I want to be. So.
Awesome. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Well, Cora, you had said that you use some of our parks a little bit, so I'd love to hear a little more about your experience with our parks and what your favorite parts are and what you're hoping you might accomplish being a part of this committee.
Yeah, I mostly use the parks for running. I used to be a long distance runner, and now I'm recovering from an injury. So I live like really, really close to Stevens Park, so I like to kind of do laps in there for running. In the winter, I ended up at Maple Street Park every once in a while, just like if I had a snow day, it was a nice place to be outside. So that's just how I've used them. I feel like when I'm at the parks, I never see other people, which I was like, maybe this is a me thing. Maybe I go at a weird time. I don't know. But I guess like for me, I was really shocked, particularly with Stevens Park, because I feel like there's so many little houses nearby, and the amount of times that I've seen other people just like walking through it and using it, and like even some of my neighbors that I've talked to were like, what do you mean you go run in the woods? And I was like, yeah, there's woods like right across the street, and they're like, no idea that it's there. So I think for me, I'd like to see that like more people know that it's there and that they could use that space.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just noted in your application too, you were talking about, again, making sure the community is aware of the amenities that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
But you used the phrase, of course, community engagement. So I'm curious about your thoughts around how you would perceive a better way, or maybe you give us a good thought on what you think a way to engage with the community is to let them know about the amenities we do have.
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, as somebody new to Essex, like, I feel like in order to figure out about what's happening in Essex, you really have to go to, like, the Essex Junction webpage, so you need to be actively searching it from my experience. And admittedly, despite my age, believe it or not, I am not the most, like, in tune with everything on social media and the internet. I have my keep my distance from that a little bit, but I feel like I would love to see there just being more like put out to the community. I know like the reporter has like a little piece in there about stuff that's happening. I'm yeah, a weird, a weird millennial that reads the newspaper and doesn't use social media.
You're the one.
I'm the one. So I feel like, yeah, having more of a social media presence would probably help people of my generation and younger learn about these types of things. But I also think just like general like flyers and posters in community spaces, like I never see things like if I go to the bagel shop or the coffee shop, I don't see things of like, oh hey, come join this club that we have. We play basketball on these days, or come do this event. And I think just leaving things like flyers in places where people are already engaging with the community would be nicer.
Thank you.
Excellent. Amber? Nothing? Tim?
I'm good. I appreciate your affinity for Stevens. I live just down the road, and
Oh, okay.
and so it's nice to hear someone's using that park.
Yeah.
I drive by it a lot, and it is one of those. It's just down the road from the largest population density in the city, off of Park Street, and until recently there was some tree trimming that happened through there after the storms, and I made a comment at one of the council meetings that I just happened to notice the Stevens Park sign shining in the sunlight, and it's the first time I've seen that in a long time. So your affinity for Stevens Park is appreciated, because it really is a nice little spot to run, and so I thank you for wanting to step forward and volunteer to help, serve the community. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We have at least one more session of these interviews, maybe two.
Okay.
And so we'll be letting you know, it might be a little bit,
Okay, that's fine.
a month or two.
Okay,
depending
and you would
on-
just send me an email? Okay.
Yes, Joanne will send you an email. And this is a brand-new committee, so you're not missing anything. Once we have enough people to get it up and running, then we'll get it started. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Please stay if you'd like to. All right, 5B, annual presentation by Tree Farm Management Group. Come on up. And if we need more chairs, we can get more chairs, or just move them for you.
I think just two of us are
All right,
speaking.
great. All right. If you,
All right, well, welcome. Thank you for having us.
sure, if you don't mind introducing yourself too for the
Yep.
recording, thank you.
I'll do that right now.
Yep.
My name is Sven Eckloff. I'm the president of the Tree Farm Management Group.
And I'm Giles Williams, treasurer.
I will say there's 6 of us here that's on our board, so we've met quorum, so we're not conducting business, we're just reporting. I don't know if there's more online, but there's 6 of us in the room. So, great, thanks for having us. This year has been a great year at the tree farm, all in all. The weather helped too, compared to previous years, so it was a win-win. When the weather's good, we do better. It's that simple. I do want to just acknowledge the board members. We have 11 board members now. In past years, we started at 6 when I first joined, and now we have 11, so that's one of the things that we have met. We have Jim Gowdy with Nordic, Giles Willie with Vermont Soccer Association, Maria with Burlington Rugby, Allie Vile, she's representing the town of Essex, Adrian Martin, who's representing the town, Parks and Rec, Mark, Parks and Rec with the Junction, Marcus, he's on our board now, Mike Nick, he helps with our adult leagues, Charlie Lancaster, who's an Autumn Pond resident, Mark Benjamin as well, Autumn Pond, and myself. So we have 11-member board, 6 of which live in the Junction. Okay? Just real quick, I think you guys know what where the tree farm is and what it is, but we do, a lot of places, a lot of people in clubs call it home, Essex United Soccer, Nordic Soccer, as you guys know, Burlington Rugby, all of our adult leagues, Top Soccer, which is a program through the VSA. It's their home fields for its kids with disabilities learning to play soccer, which is a pretty cool event. It's on Sundays in the fall. Essex High School uses it for their JV soccer programs, boys and girls, and then their cross-country. They have 2 big events every year at the tree farm. They used to have 1, this year they have 2. So, and this year we also have football. The Buccaneers football program has been at the tree farm every Saturday as their home field, and they hosted their first tournament there, or second real tournament. So all in all, it's been good. Giles will touch on the financials. I'll just give you the highlights of the things that we focused on this year. All in all, we had about 2,500 hours of rental time at the tree farm. That means we're renting our fields. It was our busiest and best year yet. Revenue was up. We're still getting checks in the mail, so right around 208,000. From last year, we ended about 168, if I remember correctly, so it was a big improvement. Part of that was we raised our rates last year, so 10%, so right now we're at $72 an hour currently. We also brought Essex United, who I represent, in Nordic. They're now paying the full rate, just like everyone else, so that's another increase in revenue. And more importantly, we just had more people requesting time to rent fields. So all in all, revenue was way up. We hosted 5 large tournaments this year, which is more than we've ever done. We normally host 2, sometimes 3. This year was 5, so that was a major plus. We had the Nordic Cup, which is our biggest tournament that we host. Essex United, which is another big one. It's more or less 4 weekends in a row in the month of June, so it's busy. The Interlock Frisbee tournament, they come in, come out. We don't even know they're there. They're like the best customers you can have. 802 Lacrosse had a wonderful tournament this year. They improved how they did things from the previous year, so we brought them back. It was a big success for both. We're hoping they come back next year. And the Buccaneers football tournament rented the whole facility for the first time and invited most football teams in the state to come play. We learned there football travels bigger than other sports. So if you have a team from, say, Fairfax, the whole town shows up. Unlike soccer, we have like 2 parents. So that was our first time hosting it. So we've learned, we have to control parking and do a little bit better job with football, but it was a great new experience. Any given time at the tree farm, we had 5 or so sports going on at the tree farm, primarily soccer, as you guys know, but football, frisbee, running, rugby, and lacrosse. So it was great. Just to give you a kind of a sense on who uses the tree farm, 80% of our field rentals are kids and kid sports, with about 20% or so with adults. The adult leagues and rentals are increasing, and we're considering even increasing them even more. But the majority of the users are for kids in their rentals. Real quick, some of our focuses for 2024 we're closing the tree farm this weekend. I think the flags are coming down, right? One was to reinvest in the facility, which we did. All the fields were operational this year, which was a big improvement from last year and the year before. So that's another reason why revenue was up a little bit. We really focus on field rotation. When you have as much traffic as we do, you really need to rotate fields, or else they just get worn down, and rest fields periodically. This is one of my personal things. We improved the portalet experience. We have a new provider. It cost us a little bit more money, but I had more positive feedback on that than anything, so I think that was one of my focuses. It went really well, and we're going to invite the same company back next year. We had CTE. We work with them. I'm trying to foster more and more programming through them, but they helped trim a lot of our hedgerows this year, so if you had a chance to go there, it looked like a new facility, especially in the spring. All the hedgerows were cleaned up. Another key thing that we were trying to do this year was diversify our user base and not just be a soccer facility. Traditionally it was a soccer facility, but as I mentioned, soccer, rugby, lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, football, and now we have 2 cross-country events, which we give to the school for free. In return, they have to maintain our trails. It's a kind of a handshake agreement. So it's a win for them, a win for us. And now we have 600 kids running. It's a pretty big event. It's pretty exciting if you have a chance to go. In previous years, our costs, or especially last year, our costs were high, so a goal this year was to reduce our costs, which I think we have. Our costs are still a bit higher. We had some one-time costs last year and this year, but looking forward, I think our costs will come down even more in some areas, which will be good. We met all our deadlines that was asked of you in the town of Essex. I don't think we missed one deadline. One thing that's still pending is our nonprofit status. I talked to Bernie Sanders' office yesterday. We got an extension from Regina and from Greg at the town. We filed our application 6 months ago tomorrow, and there's been no update from the IRS. And we can't call or inquire until we hit the 6-month day, which is tomorrow. So we've been very patient. We're using an attorney in Burlington to do this for us and help us, and every time we contact them, it's very expensive. So the town recommended I reach out to Bernie Sanders, and Marcus also said that in our last meeting a few days ago. So I did that yesterday. I'm hoping to hear from them. I'll get a call back in a few days to see if they can push it forward. But we're kind of at the schedule of the IRS. And it turns out we're not the only nonprofit that's in this situation. So. Another thing is just overall, this is my thing, I'm in the communication, I'm in finance, and I think improving the communication with you folks and the town of Essex. I think in the past it's been kind of quiet. I think overall just improving the experience, improving the communication so we know we all know what's going on in the tree farm and be fully transparent. I think that's important. I think we've done a good job there. Road and parking. So a lot of our budget items go to the field and the road. It takes one rainy day on a Thursday at 5:30 to ruin our road. So that has been a struggle of ours, and that's been a focus of mine to get better. So the town of Essex helped us this year. We paid for their services, the tree farm did. And next year we have a commitment with an outside provider to help us grade the road more frequently. And it's not, the costs are reasonable. So next year we have a bigger line item for road and parking, because that's the one part to the tree farm that we gotta do a better job at. It's the busiest dirt road in Essex, all of Essex. So, back to parking and just being neighborly. Giles and a few of us have really increased our relationship or improved our relationship with our neighbors. Most of the residents on Colchester Road, Old Colchester Road, help police the tree farm during the winter months. I went door knocking a couple times. So they call me when they see anything there, and things happen all winter. They break through things, get through the gates. So they call me, and the police are always called. So it's good. They're looking out for the tree farm. And then Autumn Pond, as you know, is a growing community. And we have 2 members that live there that are on our board now. And sometimes we have folks that like to park at Autumn Pond, even though there's plenty of signage not to park there. So we've been adding more signs. We're doing everything we can to be a good neighbor to them. They're having a major development there. They've asked us if they can use the tree farm for parking, and we granted that. So they're using the tree farm, that back part, for parking. And in return, we're gonna get a lot more parking lot and road material at the end, and they'll give it to us for free. So it's another thing that I'm trying to do better with, and being a good neighbor. We increased our board members, like I said, to 11, so we've met the requirement that you guys have asked, which was great. We updated our tournament agreement since the lacrosse tournament last year. We totally revised everything. And so we are in much more control of our tournaments and the parking situation. So this year we didn't have I don't think we had one car parked on Old Colchester Road. I walk that every single day if needed, just to make sure that doesn't become a problem again. And we provided a management plan last December. We have yet to update that, but that's on my agenda once we close down the tree farm and I have more time to do that. So I suspect it's gonna look very similar, with maybe some small changes. And I'll just open it up.
Sure.
He'll just highlight some of the financials.
So on the finances, as Sven said, our income this year was the highest ever, or back as I have records. And it was kind of a little bit of a double-edged sword because of what happened in 2023 with the lacrosse tournament, where the weather and their not understanding how that was going to damage the fields. We had to close down the whole front complex. So are you familiar with the tree? So when you come in, where the parking, that whole area, we call that the front complex. So that entire area was closed. And so that we had to bring in material, seeded it, fertilized it, watered it. So we essentially lost that revenue for the entire fall. And that's the busiest season for that front area, that's the busiest season for it. We were able to accommodate in some of the other areas of the facility, but it wasn't ideal. So while our numbers in 2024 they're fantastic, to compare them to 2023 it's kind of a misnomer and probably not a good exercise, because 2023 just had some variables in it that hopefully will never happen again. So our forecast for 2025 is more in line with what we are doing for 2024. This year we'll end up, we have about 9,000 in receivables yet to come in. So we'll be in the 216,000 range for this year, for 2024. And in 2025, we did do about a 3% increase in fees. There's a point at which there's a diminishing return. We can only charge, no matter what we do to that complex, there's a point at which you're going to drive customers away. And so we feel like if we do it at the rate of inflation and cover that aspect of things, we really don't want to go too much further than that. And so given the number of fields that we have and the uses that they can the utilization, we're going to cap out at some point. It's going to be somewhere in that $220,000 range. So that means that we then have to be more diligent with maintaining our expenses and how we look at those. And so in 2024, we had a bunch of expenses that I would say they're not tied to our operations in terms of, so taxes, we had to pay back taxes, we had to pay an accounting firm to do those back taxes, we had to pay a legal firm to get our 501c3 status going. So all that's just wasted money. And so in 2025, we won't have those expenses anymore, which will then allow us to then reinvest those dollars back into the facility. We normally like to work on one major field renovation, so we'll take a field offline for either the spring or the fall and do what we did to the complex last fall. So one of the fields we're going to try to take care of, show some love to the rugby group, and we think, this is an interesting tidbit, I'd love to know if this is actually true, if somebody could research this, but on field one, the one that's right in front of the cemetery, on the front half of it, it's all divots now. I mean, it's deep, deep divots. And we think that's where they buried the stumps. This would have been 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And of course, the stumps start to decay and you start to get some, and it's not good. So
Rugby players are tough.
They're tough, but they're not that tough. So we're gonna show some love to that field and then to the gold mouse around the entire facility, and that's all based on water. So we have some irrigation that, we have a lot of irrigation, but it's manually. So people like myself and Sven, Jim, we have to go out there and move the reels. So we'll do an area, a couple fields, and then move on. But the idea would be to replace all of the sod where the gold mouse are to get them back to, grade A type stuff.
Yeah, this year we did not have a field down, but next year we're trying to have one field retired for the season. It needs a break.
So we're building up the kitty. We burned a lot of money in 2022. Between 2022 and 2023, we burned a ton of cash, and that was to pay for taxes that, unfortunately, the 501c3 lapsed. This is what happens when you have 10 years, and the penalties and the interest on that money. It was just sick how much money we blew because of nothing productive was achieved, and unfortunately it was a lesson learned and will never happen again, but it was certainly a costly lesson. So we're now in the process of building that kitty back up again, and so our cash balances as of yesterday are sitting at we have about 70. Yeah, I just had to get it to where I could read it. 69, so $70,000 between our money market and our checking account. And if I carry forward what we'll end up paying out for and coming in, we're gonna have, so that cash balance will be in somewhere around 60,000. And we had it up around 75 to 80,000 at our peak. So we're getting there. And so hopefully we can then spend roughly about 20,000 a year put back into the facility to make sure those fields are top notch, and the surrounding facilities as well. So the parking areas and even the little things like the fence. Right now, that split rail fence needs some work, but you gotta have something to replace it with. We're thinking, we've done rocks, those big boulders, but you need an excavator to pick up the boulders, and we have to arrange for that. So we've got plans that we want to put together, and we've got a good group of people that help out, and so a lot of volunteerism that goes into making that thing work. So.
Yeah, I'll
Might be
just,
a good place for you to run.
I'll-
It's lots of trails.
It's just far enough from my house where I'm like, I have to run there. I can only run so far. So I'm like, I can only run so far. And then it's like, I get there and I gotta go home, so
I'll,
I drive to places in a row. I don't use the car.
I run at the tree farm. I'm there almost every day when my kids are there, so it's a
We'll
quick
get you the
loop,
coach.
and I'm sure a good
Maybe
runner.
excuse you.
It's very flat, well, I guess you could go up the trails, never mind.
And I think I'll just end on our focus for 2025 from this point forward, or 2024 to 2025. One is, in a perfect world, we have 11-member board. I think it would be great for the board if we had someone from the school on our board, since they are using the facility. So we've been trying to do this for 3 or 4 years. No one at the school level is willing to say yes yet, but I'm still trying to do that. It would, since CTE uses the tree farm for its logging purpose, its logging program, natural resources, they're the ones that cleaned our hedgerows. They're the ones that actually, we got the boulders there. They brought the heavy machinery, moved the boulders for us. It's kind of like an educational playground for CTE. So I'm hoping we can have someone from them come join our board. That'd be great. Focus for 2025, again, the fields are always our focus, but there's gonna be a greater focus on our roads and parking lot. I am set to figure out a better solution. Our pricing, to what Giles said, we've increased our pricing somewhat to be in line with inflation this year. We've had 3 straight years prior to this of pretty large increases for our end users. So I think a more simple increase this year that in line with inflation makes sense. We're kind of at that point now where we're getting close to turf rates. So if you're in the sporting community, everyone prefers turf. So we have to make sure we're marketable. Next year, so this year, everyone moved to the same pricing for hourly rates, but next year, tournaments, everyone pays the same tournament rate. So this year, Essex United and Nordic paid what they've always paid. Next year, Nordic and Essex United pay the same rate as everyone else.
Why were they paying a different one?
They in the original agreements that went way back, they ponied up a deposit. So it wasn't that they paid less in total, it was just how the thing was brought into play. So they would, Nordic and Essex United being 2 of the, so Nordic, Essex United, Vermont Soccer, and Burlington Rugby, they were the 4 original players in the tree farm 25-ish years ago. And so arrangements were made back then, and so they would pony up $5,000 each at the beginning of the season. So they hadn't used the thing at all, and they would pay $5,000
To help with cash flow earlier in the year.
Yeah, because we don't see any money until mid to late April, probably late April.
Yeah, but in short, everyone's paying the same. We just did it in a schedule. If you go back 10 years, everyone was paying the same, but then we kept increasing rates and it just got a little wonky, including this $5,000 up front by both clubs. We did away with that, so now everyone's paying the same.
Yeah.
So we thought it's time to do that, so. And last but not least, I think you mentioned our goal is to reduce costs this year, keep increasing revenue, finding new ways to make revenue there, and rebuild our bank balances. I think those are our 3 main things we want to do. Capital projects, I think you mentioned this last time we met. I would love to get a capital project plan going. In true honesty, we don't know our future. It's hard to plan long-term if you don't know our future. I can't speak for everyone on our board, but I can speak for the board. We are interested in being invited back to run the tree farm. I think we've done a pretty good job the last few years. There's a lot of volunteer hours that don't get measured. We have no idea how many hours of volunteerism. We just closed the tree farm. We had 60 to 80 people there closing it for free for hours and moving goals. It's a true community park, and everyone comes to help. So we're interested in coming back if you guys want us. So.
I guess I have a question. That was really complete, thank you. And I'm glad you had a good year with no big structural surprises.
Yeah.
I remember the description from last year that you mentioned. That sounded pretty rough. You mentioned, reaching a cap in fees. Where would people go? Because not that we necessarily want to raise them, but if we, talk about a capital thing, then there needs to be there might need to be
It's
some
a good-
movement there, but,
It is
because
a
I
good
sort of
question.
remember over the past 3 or 4 years of this discussions that there was nowhere to go. And
Yeah,
I'm not trying to lock people into, you're gonna have to pay or else.
Yeah.
Is it the tournaments that we'll just say, we'll just go to another region, for
Tournaments
instance,
would
we
be-
just
it
won't
would
come to
be
this
tough.
region?
I think it's more like, I'll use Mike as an example, and he can speak for himself, but like St. Mike's has turf, and they're, how much an hour?
They're, I don't know if I should give it right now, but,
It's public.
they're a little more than
Yeah.
we charge.
But it's turf, so you know you're getting, some people love turf, some people hate turf, and professional players hate it, but
we're
So
hearing
as a
feedback from our
renter,
users.
I'll-
We're hearing feedback, it's like, this is 4 years of increases. At the end of the day, we're here, this is a park for primarily kids. It's like a focus, right? And often if we raise our rates, and then all the other programs have to increase their rates, and then you start wondering if less kids will play sports or be outside, so.
The thing about turf is that it's more of a guarantee than grass fields because the tree farm will shut down because of heavy rains. Whereas the St. Mike's or any
or
turf facility
UVM, South Burlington.
doesn't have to. So it's a little more expensive, yes, but the players are willing to pay for that. And from a league management perspective, it's also more of a guarantee that the games are gonna be held.
Right.
So it's kind of it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, since bringing up turf, like what's the expense in any clue
About $1 million.
ballpark?
$1 million bucks.
About $1 million a field,
Okay,
and then every 10
That number
years-
has been floated around for a long time, I don't know how accurate it is.
Adjusting for inflation.
it's more than 5.
It's $1 million, and then you have to replace the turf
Every 10.
every 10 years or so, depending on how much sun you get.
And keep it wet,
Yeah.
keep it wet and cool.
Yeah, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
So a lot of places would do, a capital project might be take Field 3 and turn that into turf. And then you can play in February to December, you know, because you can brush it off. And so it would allow for a longer playtime, but keep everything else grass so that you could, and the other option we looked at last year was true irrigation, not sprinklers, but true irrigation. And, you know, the first one was 50,000. The first field that you do is 50. And then each subsequent field is somewhere in the 15 to 20 range. So again, you gotta, it helps a great deal because fields love water, but you gotta be able to suck up that initial capital.
The tree farm actually has the perfect landscape for fields. It's the perfect blend of sand, which, you know, think about a golf course, they replace divots with sand and material. But when you have sand, if you don't have rain for 4 days, right, it drains better. So irrigation and water is a key thing at the tree farm. But it actually is the perfect soil for an outdoor facility.
Well, great,
All right?
thank you.
Deal?
Thank you. That is very thorough and very much appreciated.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this, one closing note, we are a self-enterprise fund, so what we make is what we spend. There's no outside taxpayer money from both sides. And most of our board are volunteers. Some represent each side, and they're, I guess, paid as part of their job, but most of us are volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments from anyone in the room on this topic, or anyone online? Have any questions or thoughts on this? Trying to get to Zoom. There's no one in the room with their hand up. We'll just give it a few seconds for online. And I'm not seeing any, so Sven, sorry about that up and down, but I think we're all set.
I need it.
All right, we'll do 10 then.
Good explanation.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. All right, 5C, annual Essex Rescue presentation, and we have Colleen Ballard, I believe.
Yep, she is online.
Great.
Good evening, everybody.
That was quite the tent you had at Pumpkin Palooza.
Wasn't that great?
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, I don't know who enjoyed it more, the crew or the kids, but they definitely had a fun time there. That's a tough act to follow, the tree farm. I will say for us, they certainly have made some changes to make fields easier identifiable for us to get emergency equipment in to take care of people. And somebody stopped by recently to talk about how to get us a key so that we can access the code, I guess, to get trucks in there because we couldn't go another way. So it was really, I think they're doing a great job for us. As far as our ask this year, I have papers everywhere. This year we are looking to increase our our contributions from our municipal partners to 5.5%. Last year we did 3%. It did not quite cover our CPI increase for staff. And we had some pretty large expenses and things with inflation. The 5.5 will help offset some of those overages. I this year included in the letters to the different communities the percent increase in their call volume. Overall, our call volume in the last 4 years has gone up 30%. So I just thought it was interesting on a smaller scale for everybody to see what their volume was looking like. Financially, we're doing okay. The staffing issues that everybody is facing, we are certainly not out of the woods with that ourselves. We had 10 positions that we had funded. We just barely hired the 9th person, and now I'm going to lose another person, dropping us back down to 8 for family reasons and childcare being more expensive than what it would be if they just stayed home with the child. So that definitely is going to hurt a little bit. We increased our per diem and part-time personnel significantly. I want to say it was like a 20% increase in per diem and part-time staff to try and get our second ambulance up and going. We were doing pretty well for a little while there until other ambulance services started also struggling for people. A lot of our people between the fire departments and EMS share a lot of personnel. So when one agency starts hurting, people get held over at their job and then they're no longer available for you. Or a lot of our EMS, my full-time people are working in 3 other EMS agencies on their days off. So talk about burnout, it's going to happen pretty rapidly. And then it makes the second ambulance piece of it very unreliable. So that is the biggest challenge we're facing right now, is the reliability of our per diems and part-timers when they are also working for other EMS and fire agencies. I mentioned our call volume is up. We've made some capital expenses that were not anticipated. Our heating units, which our HVAC system completely went down, which is pretty problematic for us. That was a $40,000 investment that we were not planning on making yet. But now we have heat and AC, and hopefully the newer system will help see some of the benefits budget-wise of the costs associated with aging heating and ventilation systems. What else can I tell you? Do you have any questions for me that will trigger other thoughts of things to share?
Elaine?
Hi, Colleen. This is Elaine Haney.
Hi.
Hi. Quick question. I noted you sent us a while back your third quarter statistics and everything, and I was reviewing those.
Sure.
And you're still doing a subscription, like a recommended subscription amount, right?
Correct. That is going to be increasing this year by $5. But yes, we still offer a subscription plan. It is unlimited service. So regardless of what the call is, yes, that we are still offering that plan.
And you're increasing it by $5 to how much?
We're increasing it from $50 to $55.
To 55.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if conversations have happened. I mean, I think a lot of people would probably be more than happy to spend more than $55 to remove that burden of insurance coverage for an ambulance trip. So is it
I
an
don't
accessibility
disagree with you
thing,
for
or-
some, but the $50 as it is really hard for a lot of our elders that are on very fixed income. Some of them that were subscribers last year, we saw a pretty significant decline this year with a lot of the folks in the town, Mansfield Place, Freeman Woods. I don't know if it's related to the cost or not, but there definitely was a decline in some of the older folks that would typically subscribe. So that is a little bit of a concern of mine, even increasing it $5, that there are people that just can't afford it, and they're often the ones that need it the most. So we've really struggled with how far to push with that.
Is it
but
possible
it-
to offer a sliding scale?
I mean, I guess you could, but I think the management of that would be really challenging, being that there's only one of me. I mean, right now I'm doing the job of many different people. And that would mean that I would have to be reviewing people's financials and ensure that we're applying it evenly across the board. I have trouble with that with the billing right now when people send in their requests for us to consider dropping the bill because of financial hardship. I'm trying to be as timely as I can with things. But that's one more thing that would require somebody to monitor. And, we could consider it. It's just another workload.
Oh, thank you.
So this is Raj. I mean, respecting that last couple comments and respecting the workload and the staffing issue you just brought up 5 minutes ago, I'm going to ask a follow-up question to the subscription idea. Do you have
Sure.
a sense, or do you have numbers around what the utilization is around people who have subscribed?
Yep.
And because it does it seems to be, shift pressure a bit to the taxpayers, and that's always been a curiosity of mine.
Sure.
Not to, I realize that our relationship is, we're not diving into your financials, you're your own organization, so I'm fully respecting that. But
I'm happy to share
large
and be
subscriber,
transparent.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I'm just curious, how that plays out with the, those who subscribe, and then what's the utilization ratio for that?
It's actually not as much as you would think. It's only 9.6%. So I'm actually in the process of putting together a whole lot of fun charts and graphs and things for you. But I've got to pull data from all sorts of different things to ensure that it's accurate, whether it be financials from different years, because nobody's really ever done this before. So between our documentation program, stuff from dispatch, stuff from our financials, and just trying to put it all together. So that was one of the things that I was able to come across was, how many of our subscribers actually do we encounter in providing the service? And the answer is 9.6. I can't think of exactly what the amount that we write off because of our subscription, but I can say that as of right, I do know that the cost of doing it with printing and everything, the mailing and all of that is still proving to bring in more revenue than what we are losing with writing off. The other interesting thing that I am working on, because the question keeps coming up, is how much does it actually cost for us to provide the service? And we had a really outdated number that I provided in I think it was our first financial budget presentation that I did for you. So I'm getting together numbers of the cost of just the readiness and the ambulance leaving the bay to, the average cost associated with, the average transport, no, extraordinary measures, not the base rate, but like, what does it cost for us on average? So you can actually see the deficits in, what it costs and then what we actually receive in reimbursement. And on average, with our last using 2023's data, because our call volume is calculated by calendar year, but we run a financial July to June fiscal year. So it makes it a little bit hard. I've got to change the dates in order to get the data to match the financials. But on average, it's close to $400,000 in both non-transports and transports that we're writing off that's not reimbursable.
There was some discussion last legislative session. Did you see any relief from the state? Any changes that made any kind of structural difference at all in that situation?
No, the money that has been put aside for EMS, they are allocating to training. And for more research to be done with the Ambulance Association. But no. Interestingly, though, I did want to share that I'm sure many of you are aware of all of the press on the Oliver Wyman study that was done, and that was the presentation that was done for the Green Mountain Care Board on Vermont's healthcare system and being in crisis, and essentially providing suggestions on how to, get Vermont out of the hole with healthcare costs. And I met with, I think there are probably 8 other service heads from Chittenden County at this meeting, but we met with the Secretary of Human Services, Dr. Levine, the Commissioner of Health, the Vermont Health Access Commissioner, the Director of Emergency Preparedness and Response and Injury. And they wanted to know, like, what are our struggles? And the reason they want to know that is because with everything that's been proposed by this Oliver Wyman report, EMS or transportation in general is a very significant piece to making everything work. So without having a grasp on where we're struggling and what we see as our biggest challenges, they can't make any moves on their end. So it was a very productive meeting. I felt like we were heard, that there wasn't an agenda that they were pushing, that they really seemed to ask good questions and be the most concerned I've probably ever seen them about our situation. The terms of regionalization and community paramedicine were pretty big topics of conversation. The biggest challenge with community paramedicine is the funding aspect of it. But basically, we know that with the population growth that we have and the aging, the age group of them, they're having difficulty getting into primary cares with a reasonable amount of time. The system is overloaded, so it's prolonging their access to timely health care. So that's when we're seeing them in the pre-hospital setting, is they're either getting way worse or they can't wait any longer. They don't want to wait any longer, or some people are just using us as a filter to determine how sick they are and whether or not they can wait, or do they have to spend the money going to the emergency room. So that's an area that community paramedicine would be helpful, especially I would say in Essex and things where we have a lot of, we have 3 facilities that are residents to the population that we're speaking of. And one of the reasons why we're so involved with them is because they don't have anybody to come to them to provide the care. Whereas with community paramedicine, you are training a paramedic in a family practice setting to, do evaluations, determine, okay, this person sounds like they might have a urinary tract infection. Let's start them on the first line of antibiotics that we typically start somebody on. We'll follow up with them tomorrow. So we're performing kind of an in-place physician extender type of, a lot of what we do in the emergency room setting right now, but with a wider scope and more towards the outpatient family practice side of things. The regionalization, I think, would solve a lot of the problems that we are talking about, where who's responsible for funding ambulance services. Does it fall on the backs of the taxpayers and the municipal government? Is it the state's responsibility? Does it all fall to just the payer themselves? The insurance companies, I was looking at some statistics the other day, the insurance companies are making between 8.5% and 11% in profit. Meanwhile, everything else is falling to the backs of taxpayers. If they actually funded ambulance companies to the rate that they needed to, they would only lose 1.3% of that large profit. So regionalization would, you'd have the parent company and all the other ambulance services working underneath them. It would be a lot like the fire service, where they have, a place for training. They have somebody that oversees training. The training is funded through the state. There's financial, there's HR. It's all the things that we're all individually doing. That's really not cost effective, but necessary given the way we're currently set up. So I know I just rambled on a bunch of stuff in a lot of different areas of things, but I think I'm hopeful that there are new things coming down from the higher government that will, hopefully provide some relief to the financial burden that this is putting on all of us.
Two things. You sounded a lot more positive with that ramble than you did last year. And I just want to also appreciate the way you're thinking about it and how you're reaching out and having these conversations. And I think that's fantastic. So I'm just going to, continue trying to be positive. I think, honestly, there was a lot of negative information, but you sound optimistic, and I appreciate that. So
I want to be optimistic. Yeah, it's a hard place to be in. It's I don't know what we would do if we weren't here. Something has to happen. I can't imagine that the state's going to allow ambulance services to just close their door, especially with the report that was put out and how significant of a component, not just EMS, but transfers in general. If you don't move patients out of the hospital, you can't move anybody into the hospital. So there's a lot of inefficiencies, and I think we were given a good opportunity to share those. I really feel that we were heard. Our next the biggest thing that I'm looking at right now is how to staff our second ambulance more reliably. The volume that we're seeing is, you've heard this before, it's not sustainable. We're continuing to go up. This year we'll hit over probably 3,500 calls. So on average, it's 6 to 11% a year in increase. So looking at how to do that affordably, reliably, we did see a slight bump in our revenue with the extra calls that we were taking. It's still hard to judge exactly, how much of that, when you bill out, what you're actually going to get back. But this year, with running the second ambulance, we planned that it could probably offset the expense of the per diems and part-times. But now we don't have the reliability of them in our schedule, which is just, it's unfortunate that we're in this situation. The other thing that I have to look at now is wages, because all of the other agencies that are also struggling to get people, everybody's jacking their wages up, where, you know, AmCare right now, which was one of the lower paying organizations, just increased their paramedic rate to almost $40 an hour. So that is really difficult for an organization like us to compete against. A lot of them are offering not too far from that. So I also have to look at how to stay competitive in order to keep the people that we have.
Okay,
Right, man.
Tim?
Colleen, Tim Miller, in the letter that you sent over, it says that you answered received 1,187 requests for service in the city of Essex Junction in 2023, if I'm reading that correctly. And
Yep.
so I'm wondering, those are requests for service, and you did, as you said, a great job having 2 buses on the road. I believe it was most weekdays. But I'm wondering if you can just give us a glimpse as to how many of those calls might have been answered by mutual aid partners or additional services, whether it was Williston or St. Michael's, or maybe, I know Richmond comes into town sometimes when everybody's down the line, and sometimes it just gets backed up. So I'm wondering if you can speak to, you know, the total number of calls that were received as to what you, as your agency, was actually able to answer.
So I'm actually glad that you asked that question, because that is one of the data points that I am in the process of filtering out to be able to give you more detailed information. The hard part is the system that the state uses, the siren system, is challenging to pull data from. And then once I pull it, I have to go through it. We still have people that struggle to identify the difference between Essex Town and Essex Junction, especially when it's using the same zip code. So I can't filter by zip code, and I then have to go through literally address by address to make sure that I've separated them. In total, though, mutual aid, we're looking at around 400 to 500 calls a year of outside ambulances coming in. So I don't have that specific number in front of me that I can give you. I mean, I don't want to guess
Didn't
either.
expect you to have it at your fingertips, but I think it would.
Well,
it
I'm
would
trying.
I think it would do some good if you can extrapolate the data out to provide it at some future point, so we can see it's immense pressure that every agency is under, and it's not just yours.
Yep. No, absolutely. And that is the presentation that I'm putting together for the select boards. I was hoping to have it ready for these, but it's taking quite a bit of time to compile all the data, but it does have those data points in it for you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Colleen, hi, it's Marcus. I only want to ask this question because a constituent asked me this, and I, of course, don't know the answer, but I directed them to you, but since we're talking, figured I'd ask. So can you help me just understand a little bit of how you staff the bus, as Tim put it? You know, the question came to me in terms of thinking about this upcoming conversation we were going to have, thinking about the expenses you're facing, and the question was posed to me in such a way to say that you're running 2 paramedics on an ambulance, therefore, you know, the expense is much higher than they would think, because if you were running a paramedic in EMT, that would be a bit less, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering about I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't know what the impact is one way or the other. So if you could speak to that, that'd be great.
No, that's a really good question. And that was also one of my points that I brought up to that group when I met with them last week. And Vermont is way behind the curve in a lot of ways. Our EMS system, for example, I'll start with dispatch. Tim, bear with me. Vermont doesn't utilize a priority dispatch system. Priority dispatchers are trained with cards to assess individual requesting assistance, and they send the most appropriate resource to the patient. So in other systems, there are ambulances that are staffed with a paramedic and an EMT, or they are staffed with 2 EMTs. They don't use AEMTs in a lot of other parts of the US. We do here in Vermont. Our system is a little bit delayed. So if you have somebody that's calling for something that would not require a paramedic, yes, they would get a BLS ambulance, and that is a far better way of and more efficient, cost-effective way of, utilizing that. We don't have that in Vermont. So what a lot of services have done is put their focus on the most highest trained person, the advanced providers or AEMTs or paramedics. Before we had paramedics, we had just AEMTs, and they came, those were the ones that people were really investing their time in. They had the crew chiefing and leadership experience. So that's, and the money that they were making as a ALS provider, that was an occupation for people. There are very few services that use EMTs, the EMT basic, as crew chiefs. We started using those probably 2 years ago. We started pushing our volunteers through crew chief training if they had the desire to become crew chiefs as basics. We, whenever the opportunity presents, will pair an EMT with a paramedic, an EMT with an AEMT. There are times that all I have to staff with are 2 paramedics, and you're right, it is completely inefficient. We have changed our schedule. Well, and I sit here in front of you saying all of this, and one day to the next, what I say today may not be what tomorrow is because of how quickly our staffing changes. But we updated our schedule. So as of December, we have a paramedic on each shift. We have 1 full-time shift supervisor on each shift. A lot of my per diem and part-time people are volunteers that came up through the rank. Many of them are EMTs who have been trained to the same level as my paramedics and AEMTs, and either one of them can run the call. It's the most cost-effective way, given the way our system's set up. I don't have the ability I could staff an ambulance with 2 EMTs, but then I have to have an ALS provider available for the heart attack, the cardiac arrest, the choking child. And I don't have the ability to do that. And to me, that's a wasted resource because now I'm paying somebody to sit and wait. So they're not wrong. I would say that's happening less for us today because of utilizing our EMT basics and training them to be crew chiefs. And the next people I hire will likely be full-time EMTs. I think it would, not only would it help our staffing model and be more efficient, but it also gives them an opportunity to grow within the organization. When you come in and you're already in an AEMT or a paramedic, where else do you go? They go on to become critical care, transport people with the hospital. So it gives us a little bit longer with them as employees. Sorry, that's kind of a long spiel, but.
I really appreciated that answer, and I'll take it one step further and give you a moment, if you don't mind. If there was somebody listening who hadn't considered this particular occupation or volunteering, what kind of what do they need to know in order to come through the door, and what kind of training will they get in order to, again, move up, let alone, again, just become better at providing the service that you provide?
Can I add
Yeah,
one point
thanks.
to that? Can I just add one final, I just want to know, and what type of commitment do they need to make to your organization in order to be in that role?
Sure. So a few years ago when I took over this position, we were really struggling. We were losing a lot of our volunteers. We were still in the midst of COVID. And I finally found myself in the position that I could make changes without having to get the approval of the person above me, because I was now that person. So growing in this profession, both with volunteers and then as Vermont's transitioning to a model compensating people, there were a lot of areas that I thought we could do better. One of those was, like you said, utilizing EMTs with paramedics. As our patients have gotten sicker, one of the other pieces that really wasn't working very well is having 4 people on an ambulance was just not something that we were going to be able to do anymore. There was a period of time where, I'm not kidding, we had 5 providers on one truck. It was a clown car. We look at that now and we're like, oh my goodness. But today we are often running with 2 providers. So to prevent burnout and to share the load and all of the stressors that come with being the leader and on a small crew, is both of you need to be trained to the same level. You may have different certifications and advanced training, but you both need the same operational skill set to navigate, complicated situations, to talk with a family member while the other person's running the call. Before, you would have a driver with no experience and you could be the only ALS provider. So that was really overwhelming for a lot of our volunteers to even consider being in that position. And it was causing people to not want to work to that level. So we made some changes. Today, when people come into our organization, you can now take an EMT class without having to have an affiliation. Before, to get into an EMT class around here, you had to be part of an organization. That's no longer an issue. People can obtain their national registry certification without being affiliated. That has cut off a lot of training time for us, and also weeding out people that weren't going to be able to pass the exams. We were putting these people on the truck too soon, putting all this time into them to find out that this wasn't something they really wanted to do. They can't pass the testing, those types of things. So when people come into our organization, they are coming in as national registered providers. We help them gain their licensure in Vermont to operate. Once they do that, they immediately enter our training program. Our training program has 2 phases, and everybody enters the same program regardless of how long you've been a provider with any service. We've changed our training model from a training model to more of an orientation. We aren't going to retrain you your EMT skills that you just completed your registry testing on. So we're going to familiarize you with the different types of equipment that we carry. And we're going to ensure that you understand how we, run a call and where things are in the ambulance and how we work with our partners on calls and things like that. After the first phase, which also includes training them to drive the ambulance, they are given the opportunity, if a volunteer, to stay there as kind of a helper person, meaning they don't want to take on any additional responsibilities as a crew chief. They would only be a third on the ambulance. We have one person currently that sits in that role, and it's still very helpful that they're there. They can still drive the ambulance if need be, but they don't take on the primary care role, which has a lot of added responsibility. Phase 2 is all about leadership. It's all about the scene choreography. It's about managing stress. It's about ensuring you know the protocols and that you understand where all your resources are. So we're fine-tuning basically being the person in charge. Once they finish phase 2 as a volunteer, they are a crew chief, and they're given the opportunity to be compensated as a part-time person. EMTs that finish crew chief training have to run 36 hours a month. It doesn't have to be a full 12-hour shift. We've changed it so it could be flexible for people that can only run when their kids are in school, or maybe a part of a night shift because they need to get some sleep to be able to go to work the next day. So it's 36 hours total. It's not as rigid as it used to be. If you're an ALS provider, there is no option to not become a crew chief. You have to become a crew chief. And you have to run 48 hours a month. The skill set of an ALS provider requires a little bit more time in the seat and practicing. So the same rule applies, 48 hours a month wherever you can. If you're coming into the organization with prior training and you're moving through the training program, as soon as you're done with the program, you're released as a per diem or part-time employee. Per diems run a shift a month. Part-time employees run the same, either 36 hours if you're an EMT a month, or 48 hours if you're an ALS provider a month. It takes us probably close to 2 years from start to finish to get an ALS provider 100% on their own and in a position that they could be partnered with pretty much anybody. At first, we try to pair them with another provider that has experience for them to kind of be able to rely on if they get a little in over their head. EMT basics, year and a half probably. When you think about all the training and time that goes into all of this, we would like to see people stick around for at least 3 years so that we can actually get some of what we're putting into them. That was one of the reasons why we gave the opportunity for volunteers to become compensated, because what we were seeing is we trained them to be an independent provider and then they would go somewhere else to get paid. So immediately we'd lose that investment. I think I've answered your questions, but I don't know if there's anything I left out.
No, thank you. I appreciate it a great deal.
Thank you. Amber, I saw your hand up earlier. Did your question get answered?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, you're welcome.
Regina, do you have anything to add to this?
I do.
Okay. Anyone else? Colleen, that was remarkably thorough. Thank you. And again,
Thank
appreciate
you.
your optimism and the work you've been doing on this. Just gonna see if there's nobody in the room with us now, see if anyone online has any questions or comments on this topic. Please raise your hand in Zoom. Give it a few more moments. Not seeing anyone that wouldn't be quick to do this, so Colleen, thanks. Appreciate you staying late with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the time.
Thanks,
so
Colleen.
much.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right. So, the rest of this, 5D.
Very long.
Yeah. Department head, well, no, I mean, we just get to spend quite a bit of time with Chelsea.
Oh, wait, that's right, we're not on E.
Department head brief, Chelsea Bendigo, Water Quality Superintendent, joining us on Zoom.
Hi.
Oh,
We can't hear you,
the other mic.
What about now?
Now, unplug
No.
it.
What?
I think you
No.
got the wrong mic selected.
Darn it.
Give me a text for you. Search bar, search microphone. Nope.
No. Before, at least, we heard like a tiny sound, but you were very, very
Wait,
Oh,
now?
It's getting there.
better.
What about this option?
Yes.
That one? All right.
yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
3 options, and it was the last one, of course.
Perfect.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. Now that that's sorted. How detailed do you want me to review my summary, or just highlight a lot of what's in my memo for what's going on in my departments that I oversee?
I mean, we all have it. It's in the packet. I think.
Yep.
What are you most proud of? What are your biggest challenges? What are your concerns?
Sure.
What do you think you want to highlight? I think would be.
Okay. For wastewater, I'd probably highlight that we're just about fully staffed, which is great. We do have a full-time admin person, which has been super helpful. We share her with Public Works. I'm pretty proud of, since we had such a turnover the past couple of years with retirements, I'm pretty proud of the new folks that are coming in and how quickly they're testing up through their wastewater licensures. It says a lot about their dedication and their hard work. The challenges, our digester has been challenging this year. It's had a lot of problems, yet somehow, really just through, still having our land application program, we were able to have more flexibility in our storage of sludge. And the fact that the digester was having problems did not jeopardize our land application for this fall, which we did start this week. And the Whitcomb family's taking just under 950,000 gallons of liquid biosolids to their farm fields as fertilizer. They're subsurface injecting that. We still are working on the P-Flow project that started under Jim Jutris's tenure. We still have a grant with the state to finish that project, and right now we're working on getting that from the pilot stage set up in our garage bay into a mobile trailer. And then we are going to partner with a wastewater facility. We haven't connected with one yet, but I have a short list of people that I know are more than willing to do so. It's just a little bit of organizing where they'll get to demo that trailer as part of the grant project. Stormwater, as you know, my focus has been the utility and getting that up and running. It still has been challenging with me wearing that hat as well as being water quality superintendent, but that should change in the new year. Once the utility is up and running, we'll be able to hire someone to help share the workload. We did have 2 amazing stormwater interns this summer that helped get a lot of infrastructure checked. They helped somewhat with the utility and getting some documents ready for me for education and outreach. And so they are always a great help. One challenge we did have related to stormwater was we had some infrastructure, and a lot of our stormwater outlets go, even though they're from our catch basins in the street, they go either usually between houses, back to a stream usually. And so those are still considered our outlets. And when they fail, it is sometimes challenging to get them fixed because of their location on someone's property. We don't always have the proper easements in place from when these developments were put in the 70s and 80s. Easements were not necessarily, they might have been thought of on the plan, but then a legal document was never filed in the town or city records, land records. So a lot of it is getting the proper easements in place before you can even repair any infrastructure. But we did have 2 outlets that failed that had some more significant costs to it. So we had to divert funds to fixing that because they were in people's backyards rather than doing some permit compliance work. And it doesn't make us behind in our permit compliance. But we do need to get back to that, and having the utility up and running will help create more funds since we've been running bare bone the past year for our budget. Sanitation, the biggest hurdle of that is the aging infrastructure. About half of the pump stations are 20+ years old and in need of retrofits. And because of that, larger pieces or parts are failing. So their fixes are becoming more expensive to keep them working until we can figure out a strategy to retrofit these to be brand new stations. Looking ahead for wastewater, we're about to finish a 10-year evaluation of the facility. It has already been 10 years since our last major upgrade to the facility, which was just a maintenance upgrade. It did not add capacity. So we're working with Eldridge and Elliott, a local engineering firm, and they are developing 2 lists for us. One will be capital projects, and helping us rank the priority of capital projects. And then the other list will be when would we need another larger upgrade for the facility. I do have to recertify or apply for recertification for our land application program. That certification through the state ends this March, so I do need to reapply. I have a strong belief that it will go through. There is a lot in the air for the future of biosolids management and the ability to land apply. There are two different kinds of land application. There's Class A and Class B classification. We are Class B classification. Class A is already becoming a struggle in the state with largely PFAS regulations. The state has interim guidance out right now, but in a recent meeting I was in yesterday, it sounds like most of the requirements that are coming through, it's making it almost impossible for Class A to be allowed on agricultural fields anymore. So that's something we're always, and I am working with Aldridge and Elliott on that, thinking about the future and how can we dewater more biosolids. Because ultimately, I do not think land application will be here probably in the next decade. Stormwater, you all know the utilities being launched, so that's the main focus right now. And then for sanitation, we are looking and have a sewer use ordinance drafted. I worked with a consultant for that. I just haven't had the capacity to move that forward, but that is next on my plate in the new year, as well as developing a sewer allocation policy. And then we are moving forward with the 3 pump station retrofits, which are majority of the ones that are showing their age: West Street, River Street, and Maple Street. That will be with Aldrich and Elliott as well. So yeah.
Just a couple things going on.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. Wow. Thank you, and that was not even all of it for those listening or
No.
watch this. Really recommend, sourcing the packet from our website so you can actually see, how much is being done or how much has been done in the past 6 months or a year, and what the facility and you have and your staff have on their plate. But critically important. Any questions for Chelsea?
I have a question that you shouldn't and probably don't have an answer for, and that's okay. I'm only asking because it just came to mind as I'm thinking about all the things you just said about stormwater, the utility is, and again, I know you haven't stood this up yet, so bear with me. Just curious about the potential consumer experience or the landowner experience. Is this going to be another line item in the water sewer bill, or is this going to be a separate bill that will be received by those property owners? Again, you don't have to have an answer now, and I don't expect you to.
Oh, I have the answer.
Oh, okay.
The answer is it depends. If you already have an existing utility account with the city, is in saying that you already receive a water or sewer bill, it will be on that bill. If you do not, then you will be receiving a stormwater only utility bill.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So I'm not going to add any more to Chelsea's workload.
No,
I'm happy to answer questions.
No, I mean, from my point of view, because nobody's saying anything, from my point of view, you've always kept us really well-informed and up-to-date, and Regina well-informed and up-to-date, so then we are. I think the memo was very complete, and you've got a long next 45 minutes ahead of you, or whatever it is, talking about the next thing. But I think we all appreciate the work you and your crew are doing, understand the challenges as much as we possibly can, and really respect what you all have been doing. So,
Tim is.
Well, we lost her, but I just had one come to brain, and so I'll apologize. But you said it's been about 10 years since there's been any major upgrades to the plant, and I didn't know if you could talk about our available capacity at the moment. as far as, I know when we chatted last, you had gone through to the town of Williston, and they, with all their microbreweries, had taken out some of the process, so it doesn't make it to your plant, which opened up some capacity. But just as a general broad statement, if you could say the plant is operating at X capacity or percentage of its capacity, or we still have, and then with future growth that's planned, as we look down the road for that.
Down the road, we are going to have to add more aeration treatment. That is going to be our limiting factor. So that would expand the capacity we'd be able to treat. Right now, flow, so the state, it's a bit confusing because they care about flow rather than, there's a few different ways you could look at capacity in terms of wastewater, but the state measures by flow. So we're designed for 3.3 million gallons. Our average has been about 2 million gallons. So we still got some space, but when you look at it in the treatment realm, we are approaching like 75% capacity. But there's ways to mitigate that before you need to add capacity. And so as a tri-town, we are working on a high strength waste policy that would give us the same sheet of music to work off of with the breweries and other high waste load producers. And we'd all be as a tri-town would be held to the same standard. And be able to point to that document if there's ever an issue with a particular business or anything. So we're creating some mechanisms to try to create more space before a major upgrade is needed.
I appreciate it. I just think it's good for people to know that we're getting there, but there's still room to play, so.
Yeah, and I think it might be helpful once I get the 10-year evaluation completed with Eldridge and Elliott to come to y'all with a summary of the findings, because they are looking at some of that. They would have actual hard concrete numbers I could share percentage wise, and they're doing some modeling for us to forecast. So I think that'd be great to come back and talk to you all about.
Forward to that.
As a follow-up to that, I think to bring your question a little closer to home, because I know that the breweries it's been in the public space because of the fact that it's been acknowledged in articles and such about what Williston has gone through with them. But is the brewery situation and the I don't know, what is the proper term? Density, strength of the, I don't remember. Anyway, is it equivalent to, say, again, another building going up on Park Street? So like, is that one of those high volume producers as well? Or is it really about a level of manufacturing production?
Development on Park Street, like another 5-story building, that's really taking away flow from the facility. Not as much the organic treatment capacity. That's where a lot of the industry will take that away. Because municipal sludge, the organic strength in that is about 200 BOD is the industry term. You'll see breweries that are 800 to 1,000 BOD. So significantly higher than household waste.
All right. Chelsea, don't go anywhere.
What? Did you lose me again?
We've got more to talk about, but I'm gonna ask the two guests online if they have anything on this topic before we move on to talking about the ordinances that they want to ask or share. I'm not seeing any hands go up, but we'll be talking about this sort of thing for the next little bit. So we'll move on to discussion and consideration of stormwater-related ordinances, amendments to Ordinance 19, a new Ordinance 20, and new Ordinance 21. Introduction and warn public hearing.
Yes. So, I'm just checking you can still hear me, because
Yep, got you.
Okay. Pretty sure.
If you lean really far back, something different happens, but you're all good.
Okay, how about I just like read really close, and then I won't be
You were
able to.
doing great a minute ago. You were doing great.
You're great.
Don't stress.
Okay. All right, I'll stop moving and It'll be good. So in order to form the stormwater utility, we do need to have an ordinance to govern that. And so when looking at that, it was decided the best course of action was to make it a chapter of the municipal code, or propose making a chapter of the municipal code. But at the same time, the city does not have a stormwater ordinance in general. We only have the land development code. So it seemed like it was the right opportunity to also develop the stormwater ordinance. So that's being proposed as chapter 20. And what's in the stormwater ordinance is already mostly existing in the land development code, but it never really belonged in the land development code because it doesn't necessarily pertain to development. It's more about how the city manages stormwater and inspections and operation and maintenance and items like that. So that was decided to be pulled out and proposed chapter 20. Chapter 19 is a pre-existing chapter, but right now, and it's something that we established with the town of Essex back in 2014 to bring expired stormwater permits into compliance, and that was mandated through our MS4 permit that came out around that time, which is the MS4 permit is renewed every 5 years, and usually there are updates or new requirements every 5 years, and so that was one in that iteration. But that chapter still referred to the town of Essex stormwater ordinance since the city did not have one at the time. So it was also proposed that we need to amend that to reference our own ordinance and to just provide a general update, even though that chapter is pretty much no longer in need. And then also as part of the stormwater utility, we need to establish a stormwater user fee credit manual for single family parcels to potentially obtain credit towards their stormwater utility fee. So all these documents do need to be part of a public hearing. So tonight's request is asking for you to warn the public hearing for your next meeting in November, where I will give a presentation on the ordinances and an update on the stormwater utility, or a little refresher for the public.
Great, thank you. Questions? Amber, I don't see you online. We'll start with you because we haven't yet. Just like I turned off.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. Anyone in the room?
Just a quick question.
Elaine?
Chelsea, could you please remind us, is there an estimate on what the single-family residences will be paying?
Yep, that came in this week. It's looking like the estimated rate for this current fiscal year that we're in, so it would be the FY25 rate is going to be $72.69.
That's an annual rate split between 3 bills?
Typically, yes, but because this is not being launched until February, we only have 2 bills to collect the funds for the fiscal year. So it's, in this one case, it will be split in 2 bills.
Okay.
February and June. After that, the rate will be split between 3 bills.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Nothing for me.
Then sourcing, Regina, do you have anything to add to that before we just skip to?
I do not.
Okay. So I think I'll just make the motion because I'm looking at it. It is recommended the city council hold and warn a public hearing. I'm going to back up for a second. Sorry. Any questions or comments from members of the public on this? Again, no one in the room, 2 guests online. Not seeing any hands shoot up. So I'm going to return back to motion. I move the city council hold and warn a public hearing on November 13th, 2024 to discuss the adoption of a credit manual, the addition and amendment of chapters to the municipal code for the regulation of stormwater management utility and permit transfer authority.
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Chelsea, thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Appreciate it.
Till next time.
All right, 5F, discussion and consideration of amendments to Ordinance 8, regulation of motor vehicles, introduction and warrant public hearing.
Okay, sorry, I'm just find these. In the parks.
Page 64.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
These
I think that's what you're looking for.
ordinances are taking up some space
Yes.
in the packet.
There was some reading.
Okay, so ordinance number 8 is your motor vehicle regulations. So this is the ordinance that lays out in very specific detail where you have stop signs, which streets are one-way streets, where you can park, where you can't park, a variety of very specific things that are necessary in order for the police department to enforce our rules. So there are a number of technical edits that we've made to this in order to accommodate really two major things. One is there was an adjustment to the traffic pattern from Global Foundries, from River Street to Park Street. That happened a little bit ago. And then also the new Crescent Connector project with 2 traffic lights and a little bit of change in traffic pattern. So those are the changes that you have in here. Also, this ordinance just hasn't been touched in a little bit, and so we had legal review of it as well. So there is some cleanup there in how some of the wording is in there. So happy to take any questions or thoughts about any other changes you may want to see. This is also an ordinance, and so in accordance with charter, we have to have a public hearing about it, so that's also what this agenda item is for. So, yeah.
I just have, I think, one question. The fee that's referenced on packet page 69 at the bottom for violations, has that been updated, and how does that compare to like Oweniski and Burlington?
So,
If you know.
Yep, that is a good question. Those are, I'm nearly certain, I will confirm this, but those are consistent statewide. So,
Right.
I think it is standard.
Okay.
Was, oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, sorry, no, that's
Was the list of streets with speed limits updated? Because, like, none of the streets in my neighborhood are on here, and there are definitely 25-mile-an-hour streets. Was the purpose of this, the section 846, to itemize all the streets, or just to be sure that these particular streets had speed limits assigned to them?
I think all of them should be on there, so
That's
if
true.
it seems like things are missing, we'll have
Yeah.
to take a second look.
I don't see Dunbar, Cushing, Lavoy, Giles.
Well, that's true. Right.
Yeah, all the condo developments back
Mhm.
behind at the bottom of Cascade by Whitcomb Farm don't appear to be on here.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I wonder
maybe-
if they just never got picked up.
Yeah, it sounds like
I know where I'm going for a ride later.
it. No, you can't take it.
Well, we did have a speed test on Dunbar, and it remains, like, it came out that we didn't pass the threshold for speed bumps or whatever, and I
Something
just,
that I'd love to talk about in the future
we
is
need to
this
talk
policy.
about that, because it's not,
Yeah.
the placement of the speed tracker was not a place where anyone would be speeding, so. Anyway, that's immaterial to this conversation, but the streets are not listed in this section.
Okay, we will definitely take a look at that. We'll take a look at the cost of the fine.
I've already spoken to you about an issue we're having in Warner and Brooks. I don't know that it's ready for this. There could be some folks that come to the public hearing about it, but I think at this time, it's too early to add it. But,
Okay.
and it's more complex, so, but otherwise, I think it looks fine.
I just wanted to go to the limited 1 hour parking on the westerly side of Iroquois Avenue with the, lack of a better term, the diagonal parking spots that were put back where the Crescent Connector comes in around the Cocoa Plum Appliance area. I wanted to see maybe if we could talk about limiting that time in those spots to not necessarily an hour, but maybe 2, if we can include those parking spaces in there. To find what happens is people work there and they park their cars in those spots for 8 hours while they're working. And so,
I'd love to discuss diagonal spots citywide as
Yeah.
on the whole, and really have a deep dive into whether they're safe or not. But, again, not for this.
Yeah,
That's
no,
an
yeah,
interesting point
yeah.
with the, and
And
I guess
so-
I didn't pay attention to that on Railroad, like, are we,
and then, yeah, and then the municipal spots are still marked off from midnight to 6. And that's, I mean, I get that for 6 months out of the year, I guess, for snow removal, but as we build more, and those buildings cannot have a required number of parking spaces anymore, as I understand it.
yeah, free parking though is not something that.
Yeah, I'm not,
I don't
I don't want to
I'd rather have that
encourage either, yeah.
conversation- I'd rather have that conversation where we're able to dive deeper into the theories around parking,
Hmm.
as opposed to, just automatically changing it to, the city's responsibility to provide.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can, I guess my greater ask would be if we can include those diagonal spots in limited time parking while we're,
Yeah, it's a great question. The whole question of parking management and how and where and what should be the right thing is kind of fascinating when you look at the very random spots where we do actually have some 1 to 2 hour parking, and it's certainly not consistent. So we could certainly look at that. I do think probably a better thing to do would be to sort of think more holistically
Sure.
about the parking management
Okay.
strategy
Yeah.
for the city as a whole, more holistically.
I have it on the record, so if we just want to go with the way this is right now, I'm okay with that too. Shelter.
Well, we're not agreeing to.
Yeah, no, I
this
know, we're just
right
agreeing
now.
to the
The
public
purpose of
meeting.
those
Yeah.
spots really is for people to shop and come
Right.
and go. It's not for people to
Right.
park for the day.
Well,
So
but yeah, and that's
if
what's happening.
You know, if, but I haven't personally gone through this and
Yeah.
rated everything for consistency, so I'm not gonna pretend that I have. And,
Okay.
like, I don't know.
Hey,
I just
listen,
didn't-
if
I
we're gonna
looked
have
at
a
it.
greater parking detail conversation down the line, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I
Yeah.
think we're gonna have to at some point. Especially for some of the reasons you mentioned. I'll share a really fascinating, but
There's one more street that I thought of as Ketchum Drive.
Yeah, it's all that
That whole
Whitcomb
block.
Heights 2 area, Ketchum, everything down there.
is Robbins, is that private or is that public now?
Robbins.
Robbins Way?
Robbins
It's
Way,
private.
it's private, okay, never mind.
Where's that?
Right over,
Or, yeah,
right down here. It's
It's
the
the
little.
6 little.
Oh,
Infill.
right,
infill.
yep.
It's private, okay. Cool. Well, so we've made a few comments. So we could say, you know, we could set a public hearing with the included changes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and my opinion on Tim's suggestion is it's probably part of a larger conversation, but I'm also, if you folks are ready to add that in here.
Well, I guess
That's
what's
right.
consistent with Railroad and Main in front of Martone's, for instance, and the parallel spots on Main. I guess I just wanna, like you said, you know, if down Park, so, you know, on a larger parking conversation,
Mm.
the garage that does repairs down Lincoln,
yep,
you know, those spaces are all taken up by customers.
mm-hmm,
You know, we're providing free customer parking for that garage, essentially. And it impacts, from my point of view, the cycling experience. when if that's really not needed parking for residents, like should it be bike lanes coming into the city? Like that's the overall, like it's a much bigger conversation, you know, like, and those probably aren't limited to anything. And now you've got over on Railroad and Maple, another business that's using street parking during the day for customer parking for their business. But that's sort of what it's for. So I think, I don't know about the diagonal spots on,
Yeah,
on
no,
Park,
that's
because I
fine.
don't know what we've, I didn't, like I said, I didn't go through.
I
and
only,
look at
I only
what's
asked about it
consistent.
because the other ones are called out there, so.
Yeah.
Well, once the building where the Domino's is
Built.
goes up, I think the purpose of that parking will change. I don't think, well, it may either change based on what kind of retail goes in on the first floor of those buildings, or more residents will park there for long term. So it is, I don't know that, like, it could be a temporary thing, or we put a time limit on it now, but when that building goes up, I think that's gonna change.
I think we're gonna need to have this conversation sooner than later. It's in relative terms, I'm not trying to freak anybody out.
Yeah.
Relatively sooner than later, you know, somewhere in between
Mhm.
FY '26 and '30. Relatively soon. I don't know, I mean, like, you know, in that scenario where people see no time limit on those spaces and try to leave it even overnight, I think revisiting this might be difficult. So if we were to include it now as whatever is consistent with other ones, we can take comment at the hearing, and if nobody has an opinion, we can either back it up or follow their opinion. But it's not the last go-round on this. But again, opening these up seems to be a barrier. Or, you know, like coming back around and getting time for somebody to actually spend on,
Yeah.
let's look at the parking ordinance again, it's not so simple. I don't hear what a strong feeling about it, so I don't personally have one.
I'm fine moving this
This
forward right now
Okay.
with, yes, absolutely acknowledging that I anticipate we're gonna have that traffic or that parking conversation at some point in the future.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm okay with that.
So leaving it up, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. If we're gonna circle back around to it somewhere down the line.
Okay,
Okay.
it sounds like we're done with this. Is there anyone on Zoom that has a comment or question around this topic, which is essentially warning a public hearing to talk about this some more? Not to dissuade anybody from commenting, but I don't see anybody, so I'll make a motion. I move the city council warn a public hearing on November 13th, 2024 at 6:30 to receive comment on changes to Essex Junction Municipal Ordinance Chapter 8, an ordinance relating to motor vehicle regulations as presented and amended. Sorry, motor vehicle regulations as presented and with any edits as discussed.
Second.
So-
Just making sure
Just
it's
didn't-
done.
I didn't read ahead far enough. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Amber. Okay. Long day. Okay, that is the end of regular business. And we have a consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Council member comments and city manager report.
I would just like to thank everybody's participation in Pumpkin Palooza. It was super fun. And really great event for the kids, and it was like already out of sight, out of mind, and came down here to the police department, and I was like, oh yeah, look at the pumpkins all lit up,
And
so
there was like 30
exciting.
people outside, sitting in front of them checking them out. So
Yeah.
it's kinda nice they left them up.
Yeah, it's nice that they were able to leave them up this year. In the last couple of years, the weather has wreaked
Yeah, it's too
havoc on the
windy.
towers,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Though my particular pumpkin at home is already like getting real hot. So, and Chelsea already mentioned that we have started the land application of biosolids at the Whitcomb Farm this week, so that is happening. As you mentioned, Raj, appreciate the police department space here, so this is where the council meetings will be happening through the construction time period at 2 Lincoln. I think that's all I have.
Great. Marcus?
I want to triple down on Pumpkin Palooza, which was just amazing. What a great turnout. What a great feeling for not just our own community and residents, but, you know, having all those people come to Essex Junction and enjoy the space. And of course, so many kids just being blown away with walking into Maple Street Park. I mean, come on, that whole playground is so amazing. But it was just a great event, and I just want to thank EJRP and administration, all the staff that really came out and made that happen, because I participated mostly with the Essex community players, and we were asked to bring 2,500 pieces of candy. We brought 3,500 pieces of candy, and yet EJRP still helped support us when we ran out. So it was great that they were so helpful during that event. The other thing I want to say is that soon I'll be posting on Front Porch Forum on Facebook. I plan on doing a coffee with the counselor coming up the second week of November. That would be November 16th. I will put details about location and all that in that, but I just wanted to give people a heads up and take this opportunity to just remind our residents that business continues to be conducted even outside of big major issues. So please reach out to us with any questions, concerns, or whatever. We're here to listen, and we're here to be your connection. So please, connect with us. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Pumpkin Palooza was cool. It was great. I think maybe a huge percentage of people from not Essex Junction
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
saying some amazingly wonderful things and talking about how often they come here to do things, for instance, at EJRP and other places. So that was like inspired me to try to next year get audio recordings or some kind of because if you just had a microphone in front of people while they were saying some of these things, I think residents would be pretty proud to hear. We take it for granted, I think, sometimes, what we have here, but so many people, the furthest away I think I heard was Weybridge and Starksboro, and somebody from Richford, so that was pretty cool. Anyway,
Yeah.
very nice. Amber, anything? Good, all right, so we have an executive session.
I have it.
Oh, perfect.
Will we be coming back after?
We will not be coming back after, no.
All right, so I will move that the city council make the specific finding that premature disclosure of the contractual matters would place the city at a substantial disadvantage. I move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a contract pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to include the city council, city manager, and Mark Brislin, EJRP.
Actually, we don't need Mark.
We don't need Mark, yeah.
Okay, all right. So just the city council and city manager, I will
Yes.
take that amendment. Thank you.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.